Hey everyone, welcome to this Christmas edition of my videos. It doesn't really belong to any of the series, but I thought I'd give some generic advice on how to get started with bug bounty. I get asked this a lot, how to get started, and I kind of give people the same advice and ask them the same questions. And I think it's important that as you become more familiar with bug bounty, you are figuring out what you need to do next and doing that kind of thing on your own. So this video is going to be a ton of resources and all different types of content, like videos, podcasts, tutorials, everything. And it's also going to be a bit about how to learn. Now, I'm sure if anybody follows my Twitter, you'll know that my actual day job is in academia, and I've taken a few courses now on how to teach people. So I've got some knowledge to distill on how to learn. So this is going to be more about kind of how to learn, and sort of instead of looking at, here's the path you definitely need to follow, how to create your own path and how to find out what works for you. So a lot of people ask my recommendations, but it's really hard because I don't know a lot of you. A lot of the time, the only thing I know about you is that you send me a message that says, can you recommend me how to get started in bug bounty? And I don't know what to say to that because I don't know anything about you. And it's really hard to recommend it because you all have such different backgrounds, and that's great. More different backgrounds of bug bounty, the better. If you have a different background, you're going to find different bugs. And if you find different bugs, that means no dupes, easy payouts, right? Also, we have learning styles. Our learning styles have been mostly debunked. However, I do know that a lot of people have a preference to watching videos, or have a preference to listening to podcasts, or have a preference to doing things practically. And if you have that preference, then I don't know you have that preference, right? I've only just got to deal with what I know. So this video has every resource I could think of. There are 40 slides in this slideshow. We're going deep, okay? We're going very, very lots of stuff. And it also has some study plans. Now, these study plans are not like you need to follow these plans if this is your background, but I thought I'd give them as a kind of, assuming you know a lot of stuff about X, this is kind of the path you should follow. And I'm going to end with some kind of continuing education advice. As you start to go from beginner to intermediate, or even advanced beginner, right? A lot of the tutorials that are for beginners kind of aren't really for you because they're over-explaining, right? So I thought I'd kind of give some advice on how to continue your education. And since this is my Christmas video, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, have a great festive period. I personally celebrate British Christmas, which is Christmas without all of the Christian stuff. So this is my Christmas video. So I wanted to share this. So this is something that gets passed around a lot in academic circles, which is how to learn. And this idea you have a learning pyramid. So when you deliver a lecture, students don't actually retain a lot until you start to add these like secondary things, right? So reading, that would be your books. You retain 10% of what you've read. Audio visual, 20% of what you've seen and listened to. 30% of a demonstration that's given to you. 50% if you engage in a discussion with somebody else, you retain the content. 75% if you practice doing it. And 90% if you teach others. So I want to share this first of all because I think it's really important as we go through, especially the resources, that you consider that if you only read a book, you're only going to remember 10% of it. If you read a book and teach somebody else, you're going to remember a lot more about how to hack things. And, if you watch my videos, you maybe get the audio visual and demonstration, which might be 50%. But actually, if you're not engaging with, say, discussion or practicing, you're going to really lose out on what you're actually retaining there. But I thought I'd share that to get you thinking about not just watching videos or reading a book, but also using a vast range of learning material. So let's talk about the ultimate bug bounty learning pipeline. This is how everyone learns, and of course it's the best way to learn, which is the way everybody suggests, right? So step 1, you learn about security until you know everything about security. Step 2, you do CTFs from beginner to advanced, and then you become really good at it. And then you find bugs, because once you've done CTFs, you know how to find every single bug. The pipeline is very wrong. This is not a good way to learn. Because, quite simply, there is no course, no book, no video, no spell, no ritual. All you need to do is sacrifice your computer to the altar, and then you'll get hacker knowledge implanted into your brain. There's no resource I can recommend that will teach you how to hunt bugs from start to finish with no issue. There's no critical knowledge mass that you need to learn how to do bug bounties. You need to figure out what you need to learn and look for those resources. And it's a continuous process, right? Let's talk about CTFs. CTFs are not great for learning. They are so vulnerable. They're vulnerable to bloody everything, right? You can find an XSS by just putting a basic payload in every single file you see. But you know what? That's not how you find XSS in the world. The default XSS payload will not work in most bug bounty programs, because everyone knows about XSS, right? They've already put the prevention against it. What they haven't done is considered other ways to get XSS right, which is why you have so many payloads. The more you rely on learning from CTFs, the harder it's always going to be to jump from CTF to real target, because real targets aren't as vulnerable and they're a lot harder. They're a lot larger than the CTF. They have a lot more functionality. They have a lot more different types of bugs that are in there. The transition is never going to be easy, but the more you spend time on CTFs until you're amazing at them, is the harder it's going to be to make that transition. So what is the pipeline then? So this is our standard pipeline, but actually maybe when you're finding bugs, you find a weird endpoint, GraphQL. I don't know much about that. And then you go, okay, I'll read an article about it, or I'll check out a CTF level. So you read an article and find out about it, and you go, well, that might be a possible IDOR location. So then you go back to hunting bugs. So then you go, okay, that didn't work, any more practical experience. You go back to the CTF. You don't have this very simple, do this, then do this, then do this, because you're always swapping between them. So when you do learn, you can't just learn about security and take all of these resources that are kind of, let's call them theory resources, then do the CTFs, then find bugs. You've got to be doing a little bit of learning, maybe define some bugs. Okay, that didn't really work, so I'll do some CTFs to become more familiar. Then I'll go back to finding bugs, or maybe I'll go back to learning about security because I still don't understand it. You should be moving between these boxes, right? You should never be going one to following the arrows. You should be following what your brain says you need to do next and what you think you need to learn. So this is why my biggest suggestion always for new hackers is to not spend ages trying to accumulate knowledge, and instead just try hacking. You'll learn far more in your first time of hacking than you ever will from all of these resources. And you might not know what you're doing, and that's fine. Learning to hack is really hard. CTFs can be really hard. Hacking in general is hard. It is nothing that makes this super easy, right? Anyone that tells you that bug bounties is a way to make money really quickly is lying to you, because it's not. If you're good at it and you've got that experience already, yeah, maybe. If you're just starting out, it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. And as you kind of get to grips with hacking, you'll feel more confident in what you know. So you'll start out being like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But then as you gain more experience, you gain more confidence, you'll be like, okay, yeah, I actually do know what I'm doing. I've got an idea of what I need to do next. And that's, I think, the change, right? Even top hackers will probably never say they really know what they're doing. They just know what they need to do next. And when it comes to these resources, you should be thinking, what do I know? What don't I know? What do I need to learn next? What do I need to do next? And really, to do this, you need to immerse yourself in hacking. It's like learning another language. It doesn't mean just consuming the easy stuff at your current experience level. It doesn't mean just reading a tutorial that you already know what the answer is. It means reading things you don't quite understand yet, but you try anyway. It's listening to a podcast that's really technical and that you have no idea what they're talking about. Or reading a write-up where you're not necessarily very familiar with it. When you do this kind of immersion, you won't just be passively consuming media. You'll be like engaging your brain in, okay, how did they do that? How can I understand this better? And it's following people on Twitter, like the top hackers who post really complex write-ups. It's reading disclosed reports to understand people's thinking process. The best hackers always do this. They are sitting there being like, okay, they read disclosed reports, they read write-ups. They don't just read the stuff they already know. They immerse themselves in what they don't yet know, because it will help inspire them. And as well, they're not just people who kind of talk about hacking, then and again. It's people that fully immerse themselves in the world, right? They're the people that are constantly reading articles, sharing articles, talking about hacking, talking about bugs they found. And even if you're not there where you're finding bugs yet, you can still immerse yourself in the world of hacking and in the world of cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity is everywhere, right? It's not something you can really avoid nowadays, but immersing yourself in the world where you're not just dealing with, there was a data breach, but thinking, seeing articles as like how a data breach happened is how you immerse yourself in it. So I don't recommend following that pipeline. This is what I do recommend. So this is my resource lists. So anything that's italicized is Googleable, or some kind of product, or a company or an organization. All the links are going to be in the description, and I really recommend opening up Notepad or getting a sheet of paper to take notes on anything you're particularly interested in. This is just because I don't think everybody will want to listen to every resource I have here, because some of it people are going to know already, or they're maybe not going to engage very well with, but that's fine. You don't need to engage very well. So you can take notes yourself about which ones you're interested in. And the resources are kind of a mix. You should pick which ones that gel with you the best. Some are going to be formal, some are going to be informal, some are going to be technical, some are going to be less technical, and it's really up to you to work out what you think you need. And there's no particular order, and it's not an exhaustive list. I'm going to recommend, if you have any suggestions, please comment them. Let's help other people out. Just because this works for me and these are the resources I know about doesn't mean there isn't somebody watching this video right now who would really benefit from something that you know. Part of being part of the community is about helping other people, and it's opening a discussion. It's like we said, if you discuss it, you will retain 75% of it. And being part of the community and giving back, I think every large hacker thinks that they want to be able to give back. They want to be able to say, okay, how can I help somebody else? So let's start. The first one, OWASP. OWASP is a non-profit organization which publishes a ton of security resources, and they also have local groups and organise meetups and talks. They're usually in most big cities. London has one here in the UK, and there are far more outside the UK as well. And they have so many resources. The big one, the OWASP Top 10, which is the top 10 bugs I think it's each year, but I'm not sure. I think it's when they publish it. They have information on bug classes, so if you want to learn about XSS, OWASP have it. Now, OWASP is really designed for the other side, so when we're red teaming, they're blue teaming. They're the defenders, so quite a lot of it is how to mitigate threats. But that can be really useful for an attacker to see how, an organization might secure their product. And they have so many bypasses for filters for technical bugs such as XSS. They're a great resource, and I always end up reading them, especially when I make the videos, to understand more about a bug that's maybe in a different context to how I've seen it. So it's I'm going to recommend it later on, but getting involved with a local community can be really great for your security experience, especially if you decide that you don't just want to learn how to do bug bounties, but you also want to go into security as a job full time. OWASP are a great resource, and I've known some people from OWASP, and they are the loveliest people on the planet. CTFs. I love this photo from WikiHow. I saw it and I was just like, that kid's fucking broken his neck. That kid's probably dead, and the blue kid did it. So CTFs let you practice your skills, and you get a small reward for doing so. That's usually just a dopamine hit. Sometimes conferences will run CTFs, and you can get like actual prizes. But the kind of, the Hacker 101 CTF are going to be more, give you invites for private programs, but the two other ones are going to be more, you get a dopamine hit because look at you did a thing. You can't rely on them to be entirely accurate to what an actual target will look like. They are extremely vulnerable. Very, very vulnerable. And you can't trust it. So my favourite's the Hacker 101 CTF. I really like the Hacker 101 CTF because I think that the fact that it gives you invitations to private programs as you complete more levels, I think that's a great way to reward people for trying. And I think once you get to the Hacker 101 CTF, if you can get past a level post-book, you can probably hack a real target. Yeah, I would recommend it. And then you have Damn Vulnerable Web Application, which is something that's recommended quite a lot to starting. And then Juice Shop, which is run by OWASP. Both are sort of your standard CTFs. They don't really reward anything like HackerOne does, but maybe they work better for you and maybe you prefer it. I highly recommend OWASP's Vulnerable Web Applications Directory project to find more of these if you really want to practice more on CTFs. I don't recommend it, but if you want to, that's a list of all of them. Or all the ones OWASP recommend. So if you do want to find more, that's where you can. Let's talk about structured courses. So structured courses allow you to learn security from the start to the finish, right? They are the kind of courses where you have lesson 1, this, lesson 2, this, lesson 3, this. And they also sometimes include homework or assignments to aid in your learning, so you're doing something practical. If you're a student, I would actually recommend doing it with your university. Now, this is not because I think doing it with your university is really going to help, but they will give you that accredited status, and that can be really good to put on a CV, because the online courses, they don't have the same level of accreditation. They're usually run by either hobbyists or a company that's trying to make money out of you. While your university is a company trying to make money out of you, but it can also put its name on things. So what about online courses? So the Cyber Mentor is a really great YouTuber. I really enjoy his videos, although a lot of them go over my head. And he's just come out with a course on network penetration testing, and that has a ton of stuff in there that would be really useful for people who want to be go into bug bounties. Then we've got Pen Tester Lab, which is really recommended by quite a lot of people. I haven't personally used it, but I know quite a lot of people do recommend it, which has a course and it has some hands-on learning in the form of assignments. And then we have Portswigger's Web Security Academy, which is done by the same people who make Burp. It kind of provides both a kind of course and a reference guide. It does take you through it quite well. There's a bit of a jump sometimes between different bugs, but I think it does a really good job. So those are the courses that I personally recommend. There are always going to be courses on like Udemy and what are the other ones? Coursera. Those online learning platforms. I can't really speak for them. I haven't had any recommended, so if you do have recommendations, please put them in. I will say you don't need to take a course to do bug bounties in particular, because bug bounties are pretty course independent. There's not a lot of universities that teach bug bounties, and there's not a lot of people who want to spend the time to make the slides. So you don't need to. is what I'm saying. So let's have a chat about videos. So videos really allow for security concepts to be delivered in more bite-sized pieces. You wouldn't know that by watching my videos, though. My videos are really, really long. But they do provide a kind of, lecture or maybe a snapshot into something. And my favourite creators are Stoke and the Cyber Mentor. There's going to be many other people in there that are also producing really good videos. I just don't watch them. I'm not a big fan of watching videos. However, I also like lecture style videos. You have CS50, which goes through a lot of computer science concepts, including security. MIT's OpenCourseWare has, I think, a course on security. And there's something you can just listen to, and you can have the the video up as reference if you need to, but mostly it's just listening. I will say that what videos you watch will be dependent on you and what you want to watch. There are some people that focus primarily on CTFs. There are some people that focus on bug bounties. There's people like me who just produce really long videos no one watches. And the Hacker 101 also has videos. I haven't really included them. I've included more hackfluencers. Anyway. And if you just look up cybersecurity topics, you'll definitely find videos on them. There's a dozen tutorials on how to use burp. Speaking of which, let's talk about tools. So this is not as much like a resource as trying to learn stuff. But knowing how to use your tools is super important, especially something like burp, where you have to kind of understand it to really be able to use it. It's quite overwhelming. So there's tons of information on how to use it in the form of tutorials, how to get it set up. Portswigger have a great knowledge base. Those are the people that make burp, including some getting started guides. They show you how to set it up, how to use it, how to install it on something like an Android device or an iOS device. And other tools have very similar guides. So if you look up GitHub repos, I'm going to put a few in the comments for you to have a look at. But people make their notes public, so you can kind of see what tools they recommend and what further reading they recommend. Like a lot of the recon stuff has so much information in the form of these GitHub notes. Right, conferences. So you are probably already aware of DEF CON, B-Sides, and maybe Black Hat. They can be great places to learn specific techniques or just be amazed by others, right? You just go to them and like, wow, you are much better than I am. And they're kind of expensive to go to, especially if you want to go to Hacker Summer Camp, which is in Vegas. I mean, if you don't live in the US, your flights are easily like over £1,000. Then there's hotels, and nothing is cheap in Vegas. And they're expensive to go to if one is running locally. B-Sides tends to be local, so if you can, you should look and see if there is a B-Sides conference in your city. But I don't live in a city, I live in a town in the middle of nowhere. So what I do is I listen to conference sessions. DEF CON and Black Hat all publish their recordings. Some local B-Sides publish their recordings. So you can actually listen to these conferences and learn what people who had to pay a lot of money to learn can go to. If you do find something in a conference and you want to ask questions, usually speakers are quite fine with you contacting them via email or Twitter to ask for more information about what they were publishing. They're nice people, right? And they want people to engage with the work they're doing. So if you do want to participate, you can. There's also usually, if you volunteer, you get discounted ticket rates and stuff like that. So that's worth looking into if you can go to a conference. And you can also contact people, send them a Twitter DM, email them. They're usually fine with that. Right. So podcasts. So podcasts let you listen to material while you're doing other things like traveling or household chores. And there's a surprising amount of security podcasts. And there's only been one episode, but I really like the Bug Bounty podcast, and I really hope it continues because I thought it was really interesting. and there's a focus on bug bounties rather than all these other ones which are more on security topics. So we have Darknet Diaries, which I believe is a favourite of Stoke, Security Now, which I think is the one most people kind of know, and Risky Business, which I think is a focus on organisations. I don't really listen to security podcasts. I'm outed. What I like to listen to is sort of more mainstream podcasts. And actually, I find some of the most interesting mainstream podcasts actually have episodes on security/tech. So Planet Money, A Price of a Hack, which is all about cyber insurance. Super interesting to hear it from not necessarily a layperson, but a person with a different background to you. And Planet Money is one of my favourite podcasts. I love economics. So these aren't kind of great suggestions because I don't really listen to them. But these also appear very often on some newsletter lists, so the people are listening to them. If you have other suggestions or specific episodes, please comment them, because I think specific episodes will be great. Books, right? A lot of people ask me about books. I don't really know why. Do you guys live in the past? Books allow you to get through material at your own pace and in your own time. So instead of, listening to a video where someone might go a bit quick for you, or a bit slow, or listening to a podcast where they tend to get off topic, a book really lets you get through the material at your own pace and your own time, focusing on what you want to focus on. And the best part is some of them are free. So Web Hacking 101, you can get free from HackerOne if you just look up Web Hacking 101 HackerOne, which really is a very basic guide. It goes through, if you've got any kind of experience with kind of web dev or any kind of programming experience, you probably want to skip that book, because it does start with how the web works. But you can skip through pages. And the OWASP testing guide, which is again produced by OWASP, and talks about kind of same thing, different bugs and how to test for them. And those are free books. However, there's a ton of paid for books, none of which I'm recommending specifically because I haven't read them and I don't want you to spend your money on something that I haven't verified. There is the Bug Bounty Cheat Sheet, which is produced by Ed Overflow, which has a whole list of books. So if you want to start there, you can. I don't really recommend books because I think, one, reading is one of the worst ways to learn because you just don't retain any of it, unless you're taking notes, and taking notes quite extensively. Personally, I think you skip the books unless you really want to maybe take a look at the free books. You're not investing any money. I don't know if I'd recommend books. I would more recommend kind of practical knowledge and experience, like reading a wiki page for a bug and then trying to execute it, rather than specifically like, I'm going to read a book and I'm going to go from start to finish. So other things, certificates. So certificates can prove your expertise. This is useful for employers. As you go through, learning about bug bounties, you're going to learn a lot about penetration testing in general. And it can be really useful to solidify that into a certificate. And although it's not necessarily for bug bounties specifically, it can be useful if you want to go into security later. Especially if someone like your manager doesn't really understand what bug bounties are necessarily, or doesn't have a great opinion of them. This can help you kind of go, look, I'm an expert, but actually I got there through bug bounties. The kind of gold standard is the Offensive Security Certified Professional, OSCP. You'll see a lot of people very happy they passed their OSCP. It's quite difficult. It's not necessary though. Don't feel like you have to go get this certificate. If you want the certificate, this is probably the best one. There are other ones. Was it eLearn Security, I think, also do some certificates as well. The important thing is getting one that's recognised by a lot of people. So this is why I kind of recommend doing individual courses through your university, because your university will have accreditation and stuff like that. But certificates, you have to just pick one that's recognised in the industry. The best way to find out is to speak to more senior people in the industry and find out what they want to hire for, right? Great excuse to get involved in your local tech community. So write-ups and disclosure. So disclosures and write-ups both give you insight into how a hacker thought and what they found. It can be great for tracking like trends, so what kind of bugs are popular. You'll see as soon as the HTTP request smuggling came out, a lot of people were also doing HTTP request smuggling. They also show you what's actually being paid out and how much is being paid out, especially disclosures. Write-ups give you really an insight into the thought process. So the HackerOne hacktivity, you can look for your specific bugs you're interested in. This is how I find all the ones for my videos. I just put in the search bar the bug I'm looking for. And disclosed HackerOne, which just does them, you know, sequentially by time disclosed. You can read them as soon as they get disclosed. I really like write-ups. I love listening to how people think and how people solve problems. And they really give you an insight into other people's thought process. They give you that kind of, see where they got that spark of idea from. So this is how you can find them. I follow a bunch of, you know, some of the best hackers. So I just go, people I follow, write up, right? Really simple, see what other people are writing up. If you use Twitter a lot, you'll see people you follow, who they follow when they do a write-up as well. So you would be able to find this like web of write-ups very quickly. And looking on Google as well, if you've got a specific idea, maybe you want to do like a GraphQL bug, you go GraphQL write-up and see what other people are using. And these can be really great because not just do you get an insight in people's thought process, you kind of see how people took a bug from start to finish. Like how people thought, okay, we'll do this, then this, then this. So I really like write-ups. I think they're great. Aggregators and newsletters. Aggregators and newsletters let you find new stuff in a bunch of different categories, and Pentesters Land's newsletter is easily the best, and it's the same newsletter that powers Bug Bites by Integrity. There we go. They're split into categories such as videos, podcasts, tutorials, write-ups, and then on the tutorials they're like medium to advanced and beginners. So they can be a really great way to find new information that you haven't heard yet. And really for keeping on top, in academia we have a word called the state of the art, which is this idea that when you read literature, like read research papers, what you're really learning about is the current state of the art. So this is how you become up to date with the state of the art. You know, what are people doing, how people are doing it, etc. So I really like Pentester Land's lists. I think that is the one you want to be subscribed to. You can also use Reddit as well. I don't really like Reddit. I don't think it's very popular at the moment. Right. Actually hacking something. This is the most important advice I will ever give you. If you want to be a hacker, you have to eventually hack something. You can't just not hack something, right? So just have a go. Even if you think you don't know enough yet, just try anyway, right? It will be a trial by fire. It's scary, it's intimidating. I completely validate the experience, but you need to take the jump. If you want this to be something you do, like a lot of people tell me they want to do it as their job, you want to do it full time, you have to actually hack something. There is no like spell that's going to make it easier. You just have to start. Like, you try. And there's so many different platforms, but sometimes you just need to take that jump and just go for it. You know, my first bug, I found it without ever knowing anything about security. I hadn't done a CTF, hadn't done a course, haven't done any reading. You don't need to know everything to just start. You can just start. So let's talk about, so that would be our actually doing it part of the tree. So let's talk about community engagement, which is our discussion part of the pyramid from the start. So speaking to other bug bounty people will help you to be more immersed. You can discuss the cool resources that you found. You can bounce ideas off of one another if you're stuck. You can enthuse about new techniques or bugs. it can be really great to engage with the community, and there are so many beginner-friendly communities. I'm thinking specifically about the Hacker 101 Discord, but you know, there's also Twitter where you have the hashtag bug bounty and bug bounty tips, bug bounty forum, which is an invite forum where I think a Slack channel where you can join. If you're a beginner, I recommend joining the Hacker 101 Discord. That is my recommendation. It's run by some really nice people, some people that are really big in the community, and it's got some channels for not just doing the CTFs, but also doing sharing resources and stuff like that. Teaching others. So when you teach others, it will solidify your knowledge of security concepts. Helping someone solve a CTF, making YouTube videos. My YouTube videos really do help me to figure out what I don't know, because there's quite a lot that I don't know about bug bounties. When I make a video, there's been times when I've been doing the research for videos where I start to look up all of the disclosed reports, and I realise I missed something, right? I missed a bug. I found a bug, but I didn't exploit it in the right way, that kind of thing. Writing tutorials, if you know how to do something like how to get mobile testing set up, that can be a great way to give back to the community. Mentoring somebody or creating a study group, if you're at university, creating, a security club or society. Just offering to mentor others. A lot of people DM me and say, hey, can you give me advice? And I say, no, not really. I'm not that great. And this is best organised through the community, on Twitter, Discord, or Slack. Or, if you already have some friends or you're all interested, make your own community. Teach each other, right? This is how you go from being, a kind of passive consumer to actually studying something. So that's kind of the recommendations I have for resources. Now, there's so many resources I didn't talk about. You've probably got recommendations that you really like. So please just share them. I didn't even talk about blog posts because there's no easy way to find them. So please share what you know, share any resources you found, share some links. I think YouTube removes them, but I will unremove them. So this is the next section. I want to talk about study plans and some ideas what to do next. So what is a study plan? Since I've been talking to you guys, I see that you kind of have similar backgrounds. So I wanted to give specific use cases for your experience. So no previous tech experience, you're a programmer, you're a student, you already have some experience in security, or you're some other specialist within the kind of technology industry. And if you're not sure where to start, or you're not sure what you need to learn, these can give you a starting point. However, these are a list, and I don't really believe that that exists. So you might start with this plan and maybe use it as a kind of benchmark, but work out where you want to learn. Like, move between stages as you learn more, figure out what you struggle with and what you want to learn and how you want to develop. And as you become more confident, you will just develop this plan naturally in something more tailored. Right, so let's get started. I am completely new to tech. So first of all, welcome. You have it kind of tough because there's this extra step, right? You probably want to learn the basics of programming. Like, learn the basics of web development in whatever language you want. I'm not going to recommend a programming language. People tell me I'm recommending the wrong one. I like PHP. I think it's really easy to learn. And once you get the basics, you can kind of understand how software is built. Especially because you'll be then kind of taking it from the, you can kind of almost have like a peek into how someone else thinks. And then I'm going to recommend you read some basic security content, like security content really meant for complete beginners. Web Hacking 101 is great for this because it's positioned at a complete beginner. You can hack your own projects. And I think that will help you to link the security back to the programming aspect. A lot of the time when you learn how to program, you're kind of taught security at the same time. You're kind of taught, okay, how to avoid SQL injection, how to avoid XSS by sanitizing inputs. And you won't necessarily learn that if you learn to program on your own. So hack your projects. It can help link those two together. You don't have to. You can skip that step, of course. But when you become kind of more knowledgeable on security, you can start to practice on CTFs as you learn more about bug hunting. So you're not just hacking your own projects, but also hacking something else. So with your own projects, you kind of have that window into the source code, so you know how it works. CTFs can help develop, how somebody else might be thinking about these problems. And then you keep reading, you learn, immerse yourself in security, and then start hacking on a real target. You don't have to follow those steps. You can just start hacking on a real target. I'm only recommending these as a kind of good baseline to kind of follow. For all of them, I have this one here, I have this step. And this is not something that has to happen at the same time or before you start hacking, right? Before you start this box. I fully recommend you can go like this, or these two happen sequentially at the same time, so you go between the two. This is not this is the way you have to follow it. I thought I made that clear because all of them have that step. So I'm a student in computer science, software engineering, computer hardware, computer engineering, what have you. So you actually have a really big advantage here, which is that you have a lot of time and you have courses. Now, other people are going to tell me, I don't have a lot of time. I have so many courses. My course is so hard. But what you have is time during the day, okay? And you don't have a family yet, usually. Not people that are 18, kind of, not mature students. So take advantage of any formal security courses your school, university, or college offers. That can be, one, really cheap, especially if you live in the UK, where your student loans just pay, and if you can opt in to take a security course, that's great. In the US, when you have to pay for each course, you have to work out whether or not it's cost effective for you. Get involved with your local community. Does your school have like a hacking club? Does it have, is there a local meetup group you can join? So I'm going to recommend going to learn more, to go to the OWASP top 10 rather than looking at a book, because it starts at a more technical level, and I think it's a lot easier to engage with if you're already quite a technical person. You can begin practicing on CTFs, immerse yourself in security, start hacking on a real target. Once again, immersing yourself is really something you do at the same time as hacking on a real target, rather than being more kind of this, I need to create a critical mass of knowledge before I move on. So that's kind of what I recommend for students. Of course, if you don't really have the time for getting involved in the local community, maybe you're an older student, maybe you have kids, you just can't go out at night and go to a meetup. You can also get involved with the online community. You can join a Discord, join Slack channels, engage. Okay, so if you're a developer, you already have programming experience, I would really recommend you just start with the OWASP top 10 and then reading some write-ups which targeted the language you're familiar with. So if you're a PHP developer, look at some PHP file include bugs, right? It will help push your knowledge from being about a kind of theoretical security threat to an actual security threat. And it can be really fun then to look and add the step of hacking your own projects. Although I expect most developers will be already familiar with how you defend against certain bugs. And then begin practicing on CTFs as you learn more about the common bugs. You'll find that the CTFs are really quite easy for you because you, especially if you have a lot of experience, you'll kind of know how they're built, right? You kind of have that sense. What might be more difficult is how to exploit a bug rather than how to find one, which is why OWASP can be really great. Maybe a course might be good to try and get you engaged, maybe watching videos, reading write-ups, that kind of thing. So keep reading, keep learning, immerse yourself, and start hacking on a real target. I don't think developers will have as much problems as, people with less experience, because I think being able to make stuff is great for working out how to break stuff later. So if you have some experience with security, like you're already quite interested in security, maybe you're on kind of the AppSec side, but you're kind of a junior, begin practicing on CTFs. But to be fair, if you're in security, you'll probably already be very good at them. What you might not be very good at is how to attack something. You might be more about how to defend something. So watch and read content on specific bugs from an attacker's side. So how to exploit things. Conference talks can be really good for that, because they do tend to be hackers rather than security people. Keep learning, immerse yourself, and start hacking a real target. Once again, these all happen at the same time. It's not just this and this and this and this and this. If you're a security specialist, I don't think anyone watching this is, watch or read content on specific bugs from an attacker's side and start hacking, right? It's not difficult for a security specialist to really put their mind into an attacker. What might be quite difficult is to exploit something. So focusing on, that exploitation step rather than just the finding step. So I'm another kind of specialist, kind of a data scientist. Maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're, a computer engineer, but you've actually really been focusing on hardware, not really kind of software stuff. So take a look at some beginner's content. I expect what a lot of specialists will find is they already know quite a lot of it from just their education or their background or what they've learned throughout their career. So just skip what you're already familiar with. What you might find is you'll have these kind of knowledge gaps where you might know, okay, I know how the web works, I know how a server works, I don't really understand how HTTP methods work, right? I don't know what get and post is. Begin practicing them on CTFs. You learn more about the common bugs. Watch or listen to beginner-friendly content to introduce the more technical side of hacking. So especially in learning how requests work, how parameters work, this kind of more technical side. And you might find that you already know some of it, but just make sure that your knowledge isn't full with these big gaps. Keep learning, immerse yourself into real security, and then start hacking on a target. So those are all my kind of suggestions for methods of kind of learning and what you should be doing next. I don't think any of you will just stop here. You guys, you're smart people. You know what you want to get out of these videos. You probably already know that what you want is to go straight into hacking, or that you want a little bit more time in CTFs. My suggestion is always to try and get here, right, as soon as possible. Because this is what you want to do, right? You want to start hacking. You want to earn some good money. You don't want to be sitting around on CTFs when the real money is in actually hacking something. So my suggestion is always to get there as soon as possible. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. But I will say even if we look at this, right, there's no knowledge here that you will gain that will be directly must do, right? Like there's some stuff about whether or not, if you know kind of beginner-friendly content, but actually you can start hacking as soon as you feel comfortable with using burp and how to find bugs. So I just want to make that very clear. So let's talk about continuing education. Never stop learning. Even if you're in a job, you'll be asked to do, continued professional development, CDP. CPD. Yeah, CPD, continued professional development. And what you'll probably find is when you get beyond beginning, you've had your lift off, you've got that, you've got your first bug or second bug, and your learning never stops. Even for professional hackers who've been doing this for years, who do it full time, their learning never stops. They're always trying to up their game. But what you'll tend to find is that after you've got your first or second bug, the resources can get a bit boring and not really feel like you're gaining anything from them, even if you still feel like you're a beginner. Even if you still don't feel confident enough to say, I'm intermediate, you can still have this gap where you're like, I'm a beginner, but all these resources aren't for me. And the best place to learn when you hit that wall is going to be the community. So I touched on this briefly, but the community is great when it comes to learning, especially as you start to transition from beginner to kind of intermediate beginner. The community can really help you, right? Expand your learning. They can share articles, write-ups, videos, podcasts that are probably more tailored to where your current level is. You can bounce ideas off of people and steal their experience. Make friends with people who are better than you are, right? That doesn't mean you start harassing the top hackers. That means you find somebody, who's got 30 bugs if you have 2, and bounce ideas off of them. And that kind of experience can help you create future collaborations and help you to really develop your skills overall. And meetups in person can help up your hacking game and learn even more. You network with way more senior professionals. You may network people on the AppSec team or people doing triage. Maybe you can find a job out of it. It's great to not just go from I don't really know what I'm doing, to go from, okay, I have friends who can help me. And giving back. So for the community to continue being awesome, a great thing for advanced beginners or intermediate hackers to do is to give back, right? Write up cool bugs you found. Maybe make videos or stream on Twitch. Release the tools you make or make them open source, right? Organize meetups locally. Share tips on Twitter. Help someone solve a tough CTF level. You know what it's like to be new at hacking. If you've been hacking for years, you take a lot of things for granted. People don't really understand the difference between repeater and intruder. Repeater and intercept for actually finding bugs. You have this really unique perspective to be able to look back on past you and go, what would past me want? But also, depending on your experience, maybe you're an Android developer, right, in your day job. That can be great to give back and show people how to find Android bugs or iOS bugs. And that even, the top hackers who maybe focus on web stuff don't have. So I think giving back is so important to the community. But you're thinking, Katie, what about resources? What resources are you going to recommend? So my specific advice, resources. Conferences are great when you're more advanced. You can engage more with the content and not just be amazed at it, but also be critical of it and say, okay, why did they do that? Why did they do this? When you read a scientific paper when you do research, you shouldn't be passively believing every claim someone makes. You should be thinking, but why do you think that? And have you got the evidence to back that up? And you'll find the same in conferences, where as you become more advanced and more easily to engage with, you'll be able to kind of critique it. Well, why did you do that? What led you to believe that, etc. Write-ups can be really useful, especially for seeing how other people approach problems. Especially if you have, say, a development background, you might have a very strict way of approaching problems, which is, I know how this works, I'm going to attack how I think it works. But actually reading write-ups and understanding how other people think about problems can be really great to help develop your thinking more, so you're not just stuck in this one box of thinking. You're actually going, okay, there are many different ways to solve this. Newsletters, I think, are probably the best thing for advanced beginners or for sort of more intermediate people, I guess. Because they sort their resources by experience level. And you can read them as you're kind of making that transition into a beginner. But when you become more advanced, you're engaging with them more. You're looking at it and going, okay, I need to do this, 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 and this. And I think as you become an advanced beginner, you need to start asking yourself, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What do you need to learn next? What are the current trends in security that will help you rise above the competition? If you learn Android apps, or Android apps super in with finding bugs, and then you can start to go, okay, if I want to learn how to do Android app hacking, I need to look and see, look at these resources. So, some final thoughts. So what's the point of this video anyway? I hope you found this useful and not at all like me talking kind of down to you. I realise it kind of comes across as me being an all-knowing God, and I'm not. I don't know everything. And I really wanted to make it clear that I can't tell you the exact way to learn how to hack and how to do bug bounties. That knowledge doesn't exist because you are you. You have a unique way of looking at the world that I don't have. I'm from a Western country. I'm a woman. I have development experience. I work professionally as a web developer. My background is in data science. My background isn't the same as your background unless you're also in data science. I have a different way of looking at the world than perhaps you do. Especially if you come from another country or another culture, you're going to have a completely different way of looking at the world. So I can't tell you what will work for you. I can only tell you what I know and what I have access to and let you figure it out. And I know what people want is just a list of here's something that definitely works all of the time. That doesn't exist. That will never exist. You have to figure that out for yourself. So I hope that regardless it's been useful for you. I hope that this has not been a kind of me talking down to you and you kind of going, where's all the useful information? And I hope you found something kind of inspiring out of it. So, thank you for watching. If you have more resources, please share them. I want to see some great links in the comments about, what you thought, what you wanted to do, what you think really works. And sharing kind of your background. I'm a developer, here's something that works for me. Because I think it's really good to get that community being built, right? And then for us to all help each other, right? I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. None of us are really experts. We've got so much to learn from each other. And I'd really like to see people engaging with beginner-friendly communities like Hacker 101. So, thank you very much for watching. It's been great to have a chat with you all. And I will see you in the next video. Merry Christmas and have a great festive period and New Year. Thank you very much. Goodbye.